LFA.
This is Secret America.
Welcome, everybody. I am Jack Danger along with Jay Gatling. And today we actually have a very special guest for you. He is an author of the Mormon Monarch, and that's his website as well, mormonmonarch.com. He's got a very interesting story to tell everybody about the CIA and their whole mind control program that they say has ended, but obviously it still goes on. So we're going to go ahead and bring in J.R. Sweet. How you doing today, sir?
Good. Thank you, Jack. How are you doing?
We're doing great. We appreciate you giving us the time, to tell your story. We really appreciate it. And, you can start wherever you want.
Nice. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, gentlemen. Jack. It's a very long story. I'm going to try to be concise in it, but I want to first give people a warning. This interview is intended for people 18 and older. I want people to be aware of that because we will be speaking about mature matters. And I also want people to be aware of triggers. We are going to be talking about things that are very sensitive regarding the Central Intelligence Agency's trauma-based mind control program. And I want people to be careful. If you think you're a survivor, you need to have someone screen this for you and give you the information unless you're healed enough to watch it. I wouldn't want to trigger anyone inadvertently. And so I just wanted to give that warning really quick.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, I'm a survivor of the CIA's trauma-based mind control program. We call it MK Ultra, Project Monarch. This is a continuation of Project Monarch. The project never ended. They like to say it ended, but that's not true. That's a falsehood. They may have ended the testing phases of the project, but the project went fully active, and they are actively making sleeper assassins, essentially, people who are sleepers, and they are unaware that they are even sleepers.
Can I ask you real quick, is Sirhan one of those type of people?
I can't answer that definitively, though I do believe so.
Okay, that's what I thought. It just seemed like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it really does. I agree with you, Jack. Yeah. This is a very top secret program. That's why we have to ask ourselves, is this individual possibly involved with that? It's very top secret. They don't want us talking about it. This stuff's classified. I have written a book about it, like you mentioned. Thank you. People can find my book through my website. It's on lulu.com. That's Mormon Monarch Born into a Deep State. You don't have to buy my book. I believe that this information should be free and completely available to people. And so you can find it online at mormonmonarch.com. And my website covers almost everything in my book. You'll find all of my journaled memories there and quite a bit more. And so people are free to go there. There's no cost to it. Go have a look at it for yourself, and it won't cost you anything. But if you want the book, you can grab that too. I like books. I'm a book guy, and so I put it together in book form.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but essentially the reason that I'm here, gentlemen, I have been working fervently, trying very hard to blow the whistle on this. And it has been extremely difficult. I was born into a generationally incestual royal satanic family bloodline. And that's not a good thing at all. And my family was involved with the Central Intelligence Agency. They work as human bioprogrammers for the CIA. And That's a bad deal. I mean, I wish my family would have been born a bunch of nice farmers out raising cows or something. But I was born into a very bad family with a bloodline that reaches back to King Henry VIII. And I don't understand the relationship with King Henry VIII because, to my knowledge, he didn't have any kids or anything. And so I don't know how that all works. But I'm what's called a bloodliner, and I come from a satanic bloodline. You know, I wouldn't have been talking to you guys about this like, what, 10 years ago? I couldn't remember that I was involved in these things. I suffered from amnesia for years through most of my life, a lot of my life, up until my late 30s. And I thought I had a pretty normal life. I thought I had a good life, actually. And I would often reminisce on how good I thought my life had been. I thought I had wonderful parents. My grandfather was a hero of mine, and he was one of my key abusers. And so they have ways of making you forget. I couldn't remember that I had been put through extreme trauma, sexual abuse from a little child, physical and mental abuse, and that I'd been tortured and electrocuted and hypnotized by these people. I couldn't remember that. And I started to work through it. I was never supposed to remember. That's part of the project, is that you're not supposed to remember. And so it is effective in that sense, but it wears down, especially if they're not handling you all the time. And I was able to get away from my abuse base, and I was able to get free.
So let's start with your first memory. What's the first thing you remember?
The first thing I remember,
Mm-hmm.
as far as what, being abused or
No, the first thing you remember, like say when you first got your memories that you started remembering things. What was the first thing that you remembered? Do you remember what that is?
yeah, I remember some of the first things. One of the most important things I remembered was was my uncle sticking a knife in me in the middle of my chest. That was one of the first things that was coming back to me. I went to a therapist and saw a therapist for a little while, and we were able to work through that some. But my uncle,
When you say sticking a knife in you, Jr., was he just held it to your chest and threatened to push it through, or explain that?
no, Jay, it was cruel. He had me come into his office. My uncle was my CIA handler. He
Mm-hmm.
was my CIA handler throughout my youth, my uncle Gail Pooley. And he called me into his office. He wanted to talk to me. And he said he had two boxes because Byrd had given him something. Senator Robert Byrd is someone that comes in and out of my life a lot. And he said Byrd had given him something, and he opened up these two boxes, and there were switchblades in them.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was a military looking switchblade, and that one was for me. I was supposed to get that one. And then the other one was more stiletto style, like the old school Italian style, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me to stand at the end of his desk, and then he took the switchblade, the nicer looking one, and he opened it, and he told me to unbutton my shirt. And I was wearing a button-up shirt. I really like button-down shirts. It's probably because I was raised around them a lot because my family owned businesses and stuff, but I went to church. But anyways, and he told me to unbutton my shirt and open it. And then he took that knife, he took the tip of that blade, and a stiletto switchblade has a really fine point on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he took that point and he shoved it right into my chest, right into where the bones meet at the center of your chest there. And he shoved it in, and I screamed. I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because I hadn't disassociated enough to move into a personality that was used to that kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
and he shoved that knife in. And when I said that, he got pissed and he shoved that knife in and he twisted it into the bone, and I switched. That's what we refer to it as
Mm-hmm.
in the world of trauma-based mind slaves and multiples, is I switched into a personality capable of dealing with that. I essentially disassociated, and then he made me memorize a message that he had, that he wanted me to take to Charlie Pride and to Bird, because
Mm-hmm.
I was that year that was 1993, the summer of 93, and I'd just been sold to Senator Robert Byrd and the CIA for use as a trauma-based mind slave. And so, yeah, and then I was made to memorize that message, and that sucked, you guys. My goodness, having that knife stuck in me and having to memorize that, it was horrible. I even in that traumatic, disassociated state, I couldn't understand why he didn't just make me memorize it. But it was because they were going to compartmentalize it in my memory, in that personality that was experiencing it, and I
I was
was.
just about to ask. It's because they wanted to switch switch it on. That way, your other, personality or your other whatever, it would remember it. It would remember this message, not you, but what they've trained you to be.
Yeah, what that personality needed to remember.
Exactly. Okay.
And
Yeah,
Robert Byrd, so people know, Robert Byrd was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. He's also Hillary Clinton's mentor, and Joe Biden gave Robert Byrd's eulogy, just so everybody knows who we're talking about.
And he's a senator. He was a
Yes.
senator as well.
United States Senator.
yeah, West Virginia, I believe. Yep, yep, not a very nice man. And so that was the year that I was sold to Bird, and they wanted me to take a message. And so I had to take a message to Charlie because they wanted Charlie to test my voice. Because at that time I'd just been sold to Bird and the agency, and they wanted to see what I could be useful for. And my grandfather had been used in the country music industry. And so my grandpa always hoped they could use me in the country music industry. And so that's what that was all about. And then I took a message to Bird too about some things. So met up with him later. So that was that was that.
And how
Yeah.
old were you at that time, JR?
I was 15, Jay. Well, I was going to turn 15. I hadn't quite turned 15. It wasn't quite my birthday. This was about a week before my birthday back in 93. So,
And is Gail Pooley, is that the person that was like a university professor, American economist kind of thing? Is that who we're talking about?
that's who we're talking about, Jack.
Okay, I thought so. Good.
Yeah, you are correct in that. And so that was one of the first things that was coming back to me. I was trying to remember Charlie Pride at that time, working with my therapist, and that didn't come out for a long time. That was pretty compartmentalized, but yeah, that memory of having the knife stuck in me, that was one of the first ones, and that came out pretty quick. So yeah, that was a very bad deal. So I started to work through these things in 2017. I didn't remember them, you guys, until I was like I said, in my late 30s. So I wanted to talk just for a minute about what MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control even is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have time for that really quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I want to cover it quick, but I want people to have a clear understanding of what it is we're talking about. And so this is also known as monarch programming. People will talk about it. We see a lot of things in media about butterflies and that kind of stuff. Well, this is where that's coming from, monarch programming, because a lot of celebrities are monarch programmed. People in the country music industry, people in the film industry, a lot of these folks are monarch programmed, but it's not a good deal. You don't want to be one of those people. You don't want to be Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a very bad deal. It's a nightmare growing up in the project. And
Are you saying Leonardo DiCaprio is?
yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio is a CIA-owned trauma-based mind slave. Yeah. Yeah, I
He's
know.
been in there since he was a very young kid. Yeah.
Yeah, they used him in the film industry. That's where they use him. So he makes his handlers a lot of money and helps work on social engineering through myth building. So he's a very valuable asset. but it's a nightmare. In the project, you know, you lose complete free will. Your control of your own body and even your own mind is gone. They take that from you. It's a nightmare. And it's unconstitutional and illegal. It's a horrible thing that they're doing. That's why it's classified. The key to it is disassociation, like we were talking about before. You're trying to push, they start you as little kids. I was started as a little kid. And so I can remember being abused as a small child and sexually abused. And then as I got older, it went to physical abuse, and then even into like things like being made to be involved with murder, things of that nature, because they're raising you and conditioning you to be used to that kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the key is in disassociation. They're looking for kids that disassociate, and kids from satanic family bloodlines, especially incestual satanic family bloodlines, disassociate stronger than other people. Normal people, people who haven't been abused throughout generations of their family's bloodline, are less likely to disassociate as much as someone who's been generationally abused. And so that's one of the reasons they're interested in those things. There's other reasons they're interested in those things. But
Has anybody else in your family, since it's a bloodline, has anybody else that you know that you're related to ever prior or after been used in this way or put in through this program?
yeah, my grandfather was abused. That's where this comes into my family, is my grandfather was involved with it in the CIA. And he would tell us stories about the military, about being made to memorize messages for Army or Marine Corps colonels and stuff like that. And then my father was also abused, and he was in the program, but he didn't. He only made it so far. I don't say that egotistically. I say that as in he only made it so far because of who he is, and whatever that means. He wasn't able to do certain things for the agency, and so they only took him so far. And then I was selected when I was 5 by a man named Alex Houston. He's the guy with the ventriloquist. You know, you guys ever heard of Alex Houston?
No, I don't think so, but that's interesting you say that, though. I want to ask you about one of the things that you sent us is very interesting about like the ways that they program you, like with you got the extreme trauma, like you talked about with the the sexual abuse, and then the the physical abuse and things like that, made to commit crimes and witness horrible acts. But then what about like the way they do like the electrocution or their harmonics, where they do tone calls, sounds that only certain people can hear, that kind of thing. The different ways that they can program you in those ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jack. So you do have the incestual sexual abuse that starts very young, if not when you're born. And then you have, you're made to murder people. You're made to be involved with cannibalism. We are often made to consume blood a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, because of the chemicals in it and the hormones in the freshly drawn blood when you kill someone in a state of trauma.
Yeah, that's actually I've heard that that's where, and this is just speculation, but that's how the some of the elites and the whole adrenochrome thing, all of that comes into that sort of thing where they traumatize kids or whoever it is because it adds to the adrenaline in their blood.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's a horrible thing. And then you're made to drink it. And
Hmm.
so I was made to drink blood. And then also cannibalism. Sometimes I was made to eat actual human flesh. And yeah, that's really gross. Yeah, it is. It's a bad deal. And then you're tortured a lot. They'll torture you in various ways depending on what they're going to have you do and what they're trying to program you for. So that can be really brutal. I can remember, for example, having it was a cattle prod. My uncle had lent it to my grandfather. And you can imagine what the pedophile would do with a cattle prod,
Mm-hmm.
electric cattle prod. Yeah, he stuck it up my you know what, and that fried the hell out of me. And I was made to do that to another mind slave who was a good friend of mine. And yeah, they'll do stuff like that. Then they also use hypnosis a lot, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
They'll use it for programming and getting into your subconscious mind. And they would always use it to cause you to remember to forget. After a traumatic event, a programming session, they would use hypnotism and tell you you needed to remember to forget those events.
Kind of like a debrief thing. Yeah, they debrief you after the mission and make sure that you don't remember it.
Yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing is, you know, I have a friend in Idaho, and his father was a 40-year Army colonel. And one day I was talking to him about that, my buddy, who was his son. And I was like, yeah, they wouldn't let me remember things. And he told me how his brothers, who were special ops, black ops, weren't allowed to remember their missions. They just weren't even allowed to remember. And for this guy, it was just like normal. Like, oh, yeah, well, they're not allowed to remember. And it's like, well, do you know why and how they're doing that? I mean, so they're using electrocution too, like you were just mentioning, Jack. They'd hit me with a stun gun a lot. And then you'd be put in dep tanks sometimes, deprivation tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those were designed by John C. Lilly, the ones that I was working with. John C. Lilly was someone who was also involved in my programming. And he was designing tanks, and you'd be hooked up to a bunch of electrodes. They'd hook you up to all these electrodes, and then they put you in the tank. And then, depending on what kind of programming they were putting you through, there was one that was, we call it a mind link. And I can remember me and my little brother, because my little brother was also selected by Alex Houston for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And my younger cousin, who was my CIA handler's son, he was also selected for the project. And so we were like the three buddies, three amigos. And one time, yeah, we were all mind linked. And that's where you are able to basically understand what that other individual's thinking, what they're going to do next. I was also mind linked with another guy who I worked with, who was also a trauma-based mind slave. And we were very effective at work after we'd been mind linked, because I knew what he was thinking and he knew what I was thinking, and we were just able to work. And so, but they'll also use it for suicide programming. I was put through suicide programming in the dep tanks. I was used for a presentation for Gordon B. Hinckley back in 95. It was in the spring of 1995. And after that presentation for Gordon B. Hinckley, he'd just become the prophet of the Mormon church. And he wanted to know what was going on with the kids from the satanic family bloodlines in the church, because the church actively works at finding these satanic family bloodlines, and then they'll provide that information to the agency, and then they'll protect those pedophiles in the church. And I was one of those kids. And
so hold on. You're saying, so the Mormon church there gives information to the CIA about this sort of thing, but then in turn, the CIA protects them from any kind of prosecution or things like that?
I would say that's fairly accurate, but the church also provides protection for the satanic family bloodlines that are in the church.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
It's a shelter umbrella for those individuals.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they keep it in-house.
Let me ask you something. What I'm really interested to hear about the first time that they had you kill somebody. Can you talk about that? Can you tell us the story of that?
Yeah, I remember you emailing me about that, Jack.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, you know, I get flashes of the very first time I was made to kill somebody, but I can't talk about that. I haven't been able to completely understand that. I can remember being made to kill people several times, but the very first one, I can't talk about that right now. I'm sorry, Jack.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead. Continue. You can continue with your story.
Yeah, it's all pretty awful. So I do remember being made to kill a lot of people because that's what my family did for the CIA. See, each satanic family bloodline does something different. Like one might dispose of the bodies, or one might be involved with drug smuggling, or one might be involved with the porn industry. Mine was involved in the porn industry, and it was involved in killing people, both for the church as well as for the CIA and the Pentagon. And so we did get rid of a lot of people. I was raised in the project to be a sleeper assassin, essentially, is what you would call it.
Is this all within the United States?
Say that again, Jay.
Is this all within the United States?
No, it's not. I would be flown overseas. For example, I was taken to Japan, and I was involved with the murder of Masaru Takumi. And yeah,
For everybody that don't know, who was that?
he was a gangster. Yamaguchi Gumi, he was second in command. I believe he was in charge of the financing. Yamaguchi Gumi Yakuza is what they call them over there in Japan, the gangs. And that's a very big gang over there in Japan.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so he was second in command. And there was another group, the Nakano Kai, I want to say, and they wanted to, there was this division that occurred in the Yamaguchi Gumi, and the Nakano Kai, I believe, broke off, and then they wanted to get rid of Takumi, and they came to the CIA, and they said, we want to get rid of Takumi, and the CIA wanted to get rid of Takumi too. They'd been following him around for quite a while. And they wanted to get rid of him because they had used him to fund the gassing of the Tokyo subway system.
I was just about to ask about that.
The sarin gas attack.
Yeah, the sarin that killed those people in in Tokyo on the subway. Yeah,
a horrible gas attack. And they had used Takumi to fund the Aum. Now, forgive me for my pronunciations. I'm not Japanese. The Aum Shinrikyo cult. They had used Takumi through his mistress, who was the sister of Hideki Seijo. He was a musicianist over there in Japan. And so his Hideki Seijo's sister would ask Takumi for money because he needed it for whatever reason. I don't know. And then she would give it to her brother, and her brother would give it to the cult. And I don't think that they knew that the cult was going to do what it was going to do with buying that gas and then gassing the Tokyo subway system. I can't say that. But I do know that Takumi, through his mistress and through her brother, they funded the gassing of the Tokyo subway system.
And that's the guy you were made to kill?
That's the guy I was made to get rid of. Now, I don't know that I killed Masaru Takumi. Yeah, there was another guy. I forget his name. He was a dentist over there in Japan. And he was just someone who was there at the site when Takumi was assassinated at the hotel, the Oriental Hotel. And I don't know who they made me shoot. When you're in that state of mind and you're in that position, you don't really know what's going on. You're just looking through the crosshairs, and you're told to shoot when you're told to shoot and who you're told to shoot. And so
I completely agree. That's why when you see like Sirhan kind of thing that we were talking about earlier, he was completely out of it when he committed that murder of Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, he didn't know what was going on. You could see he had the blank face and everything. It was really actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, you don't know what you're doing. You're just doing what you're programmed to do. And so I was made to shoot an individual through a window in a skyscraper building that I was told at that time was Masaru Takumi. And the people in Japan that were assets of the agency. They tried to talk to me some in our movement back out of the country, and they were congratulating me on getting rid of him. But I don't know who I really shot.
Well, that's interesting because, right, the official account of that is that he was killed inside a restaurant.
Yeah, there were 4 dudes, I want to say, and they were coming in the building. It
was a hotel restaurant,
yeah, and they were going to assault Takumi in the Tea House Cafe, essentially. They're in the Oriental Hotel, and they were supposed to attack him in the hotel. They were supposed to approach him and start shooting the place up. Well, one of the guys started to back out, and over the comms, we heard, hold, there's something going on at the door, hold on. And it was because one of the guys was chickening out. I mean, you can imagine, you're a gangster and you're going in to kill Masaru Takumi. That's a pretty big deal. Like you have a death sentence after that. And so
if he's in Yakuza,
yeah, and so he didn't want to do it. Well, finally they just did it. They just went in, and then it was all hell broke loose, and then I was made to shoot. And then after I shot, I wasn't even allowed to stay conscious. I was programmed to black out. And so right after my shot, I blacked out. 1 shot, 1 kill, blackout, because it's easier to find you if you're awake. In those situations, you might make noise, you might stir. And so I just blacked out, boom, went down, and I didn't wake up again until my comms woke me up, and people were yelling at me to wake up because the police were looking for us there in Japan. They were searching the buildings. So
this was a rooftop. How were you trained to carry out that mission? Obviously not an easy thing to do, not an easy thing to execute that action. How are you trained as that's a sniper action? So how are you trained to do such a thing?
I'm a good shot, Jay. I am, yeah. And
no, I believe you.
Yeah, they wanted it was a competition. They were trying to choose between me and another guy on who was going to do it, and I was the one who was finally selected. And so we trained with weapons as far as shooting, of course, but then we also trained in different manners of accessing the building, because we had to do what's called a pendulum jump in that operation, which is having a rope attached to a point, and then you're able to swing from one rooftop to another. And so I had to train with pendulum swing, and we did that outside of Boise up in the canyon. I can remember that. It was up, I don't want to be wrong. It was up just out to the east of Boise. And if I was looking at a map, I could show you the exact site where that was. And so, and I would be made to go there after work. I was working over in Boise. I lived in Nampa, but I worked in Boise. And so I would drive to Boise, and then after I got done working, I'd go meet my uncle, and we would practice pendulum swings. And Kat, too, she was there. She was another mind slave that he was using for this op. But Jay, you need to understand that when these people are doing these kinds of operations, everyone has a role. My role was to get to the rooftop, shoot, get down, and get out of the country. The rifle was set up for me. All they had to do was get me to the rooftop, get me in the shooting position. Someone else selected the shooting position. Someone else moved the rifle up there. Someone else was working on operational security. There were a lot of people over the comms, as well as assets there in Japan that were in on it. And as well as the flight, everything is taken care of. You're just moved to the shoot site, you shoot, they move you out. That's how they treat that kind of stuff. I can remember my uncle, he was open door CIA. See, my Uncle Gail's closed door CIA. My other uncle, he is open door CIA. Well, you wouldn't be able to find that out, but I know. His records will say he was in the Army, but he was CIA. And he would tell me about his time in Germany, how the CIA would bring in these really weird kids to do these really hardcore operations. And it just blew them all away. Like, why aren't the hardcore bad A guys going in there and doing that. They'd bring in these kids that were like 18 years old to do it, and it didn't make any sense to them. Well, that's what they're doing, and we're programmed not to remember it. We're just programmed to do our job, follow orders, get out, forget about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was my experience in Japan. Yeah, it was a very bad deal. So that's what they're doing with the trauma-based mind control program. They're also.
And I'm sorry, Gale is still around, isn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. That man is still around. Yep.
Do you have any type of contact with him at all, ever, or since these memories have come back, have you ever at all approached him with any of this?
I have had communications with that man. He has had communications with me, but I want nothing to do with that man. He's a piece of human garbage. And so I have called him out on it. And I'll leave it at that.
I can understand that. I mean, if what you're saying is true, then obviously I wouldn't want to talk to him either.
No, I don't want to talk to that guy. And my father, the same thing. My father was one of my key abusers as well. And so, I talked to my dad very briefly when I started to remember this stuff and realized very quickly that he was involved with it. And no, I don't want anything to do with him. I have tried to talk to my brothers some. And for a while I tried to talk to my sister, but they are still stuck behind an amnesiac block themselves. They were abused as well. Just because my older brother and older sister weren't in the project, they were still abused, and they have their own issues to deal with, and none of them in the family want to face this kind of stuff.
Why do you think? Okay, Jack.
I was just going to say, have you spoken to anybody since that may also have remembered some of the things, like you said, the three amigos? Have you talked to any of them?
Yeah, I tried talking to my younger cousin. Yeah, and my younger brother. But see, my younger brother and my younger cousin, they were both programmed same as me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are very difficult to talk to. Yeah. At one point, it got to where it was dangerous to try to talk to them because,
Well, how come?
Because they might kill you, Jack. Yeah. One time my brother, he'd never come up to see me before. I lived in Moscow, Idaho. And he lived down in the Boise Valley, about 6 hours away. And he wanted to all of a sudden come up and visit me after I started to remember this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, dude, you're not coming to visit me. Like, no.
Hey, he didn't want to visit you at all until you started remembering this stuff. Then all of a sudden he wanted to come up and see you.
Yeah, exactly. And I know what he's been through, and I wasn't having that. And then I tried talking to my younger cousin some, but I couldn't get through to him, and it was so dangerous. When I try to talk to my family, things hit the fan. Helicopters come. I get people on the road harassing me. Phone starts to ring. Yeah, they really get pissed when I try talking to my family. So,
do they know? Is this without them even knowing where you are?
Well, CJ, there's a lot of different factions involved in this. You have my family as one faction, and then you have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's another faction that my family was heavily involved with. And then you have the Central Intelligence Agency, and then you have the Pentagon, because we were involved with all of those. And so my family doesn't know where I'm at, and the CIA knows where I'm at, and they let me know. Sometimes I'll be harassed by even law enforcement and stuff. They're able to use those contacts. And so not everyone knows where I'm at, but some of them do, and they don't always talk to each other. And it's a very complicated matter. So,
well, I bet it is. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So why don't you talk about one of the things in your outline was the Boise assassination attempt. What is that exactly?
You are moving quickly through my outline.
So if you want to back up, that's fine. We can start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, we'll get there. Something I want to cover. I want to start back on my outline, and we'll get there.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we were talking about the process of trauma-based mind control and how they're doing it. We talked about electrocution, harmonics. Another one is drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I would be fed drugs even as a little kid. They would feed you drugs during programming. And when I was operational, they would also feed you drugs. And they were constantly feeding you drugs. They had drugs to wake you up, drugs to make you angry, drugs to make you powerful and feel invincible. And they had drugs to put you to sleep. If they want you to go to sleep, because, say, for example, you're on a flight from Boise, Idaho to Osaka, Japan, then they're going to give you the blue drug of sleep, and you just go to sleep. And when that stuff hits you, man, you're out. You take that stuff and you're down. And so they've really narrowed down that. They've really worked well with their use of drugs. But the whole point of it is to program people with multiple personality disorders. Essentially, everyone likes to call it dissociative identity disorder. And that's fine because you do dissociate, but that's not where they stop. They want your personalities in that state of disassociation. And so they are putting people in states of trauma, pushing them to dissociation, and basically giving them a multiple personality disorder of the personalities that they want to do the things they want to do. Where's this stuff going on? This stuff is going on military bases. This stuff is going on government facilities like INL, Idaho National Laboratories. When I was a kid, when I was younger, it was INEL. They're always changing the names of this stuff in order to cover stuff up. INL, Idaho National Laboratories, they have a whole building out there filled with depth tanks, and they do human bioprogramming out there in the middle of the desert in Idaho. They also use schools. I was programmed at public school where I would be taken from my original class, my home class, to a special class for reading. I believe it was reading comprehension. And then someone would come and get me and take me to yet another class, which was in a room with no windows. They just had a mirror on the wall that was two-way or one-way mirror. And then there was this government worker in there, and you'd have your little thing of sand, your little sand dial you'd have to turn over because that was how long you had to be there. And then you had these headphones you had to put on. This is just when I was a little kid. I don't remember anything horrible at school. There's some things I still need to work through, but at this point, I don't remember anything too crazy. But they would make you listen to these headphones. And I can remember saying to the lady the first time I went in there, "Ma'am, I can't hear anything on these headphones. I don't think it's working." And she said, "No, you're not supposed to hear it." And so
is that the harmonic type training thing?
Yeah, that's the harmonics. And so they were doing that to me even in public school.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they're doing it at corporate sites, so such as Disneyland, the Disneyland trauma-based mind control programming facility.
Well, it did start for you in Disneyland, age 6 is what I read.
What's that now?
Age 6, Disneyland. This at age 6, is that your first memory at Disneyland?
Yeah, 1984. Yeah, Jay. Yeah, that's the first year we went to Disneyland. And I was taken to Disneyland almost every year up until I was 15. There was a couple years we didn't go, but I haven't been able to remember those years hardly at all. And so, but we were taken there a lot, almost every single year. And it's so hard for me to remember Disneyland, but I have been able to work through 2 years, 1984 and 1993. And yeah, there's a lot of programming that goes on there, a lot of human trafficking that goes on there. There's murder that goes on there, satanic ritual abuse.
Now that kind of stuff I can believe about Disney, because there are, I mean, you know, when you have these big corporations like that, they're always working with government entities. There's always separate wings. I mean, you know, it may not be happening, you know, in the middle of the Magic Kingdom, but there might be a separate wing off where they do, you know, different types of research, you know, and that's what a lot of this kind of thing is. And Disneyland has always been right in the middle of, you know, the satanic stuff, the symbols that they put in the movies, you know, in their cartoons and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's programming in the movies too, Jack.
Exactly. Yes, Lion King. There was a whole bunch of stuff in all of those.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan. That latest Allison, well, maybe not latest. I don't know how long ago he did it. Johnny Depp, that one was just plumb full of programming updates for people. So they're able to give you programming updates through film. But at the park, you go under that park, and there's a huge tunnel system under there with all
Yes, there
kinds
is.
of rooms and facilities. And so we'd be put through a lot of programming underneath the park. Yeah, and so that was, yeah, my first memory there, Jack, was in 1984 when I was 6 years old, and they started taking me there every year. And yeah, that was bad. You'd be made to make porn, or you'd be made to watch somebody get just brutally, wickedly murdered in front of you. They'd take some kid and just kill him in front of you. And sometimes you'd be made to drink that kid's blood, be a part of all that.
Where would they do that, JR? Where would they do that?
That was down in the tunnel system. Yeah, you
There
go.
is a big tunnel system underneath. For people that don't know, there is a big tunnel system underneath Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom area.
Still
Yeah.
there.
I believe so. Yeah, I always want to go back over there and kick in the door and try to get down in there. But
Would you know how to get there still?
yeah, I could figure out how to get where I was going. Yeah, if we could get enough honest law enforcement to go in there and take that whole operation down. Yeah,
Could you imagine if they took down, Disney, and then you see it on the TV the next day? You almost kind of wonder if corporations like that are too big to be taken down.
yeah, that's a good point, Jack. Yeah, because they're involved in that with the government. They're all in bed together. So, and then they also use, so moving on from Disney, Disneyland's an awful place. People need to understand that and quit supporting it. And then you have church facilities. So I was raised in the Mormon church, and those church facilities would be used for SRA, satanic ritual abuse. They'd be used for murder. Some of the facilities would also be used for drug smuggling. I can remember being made to smuggle cocaine for various for one church leader in particular that I can remember. And that was out of Fairfield, Idaho, and we were smuggling it up to Ketchum, Idaho, Sun Valley. That's a really ritzy place there in Idaho. You can all look that up pretty easily.
How did you do that? How did you smuggle it?
We just loaded it into a truck and drove it up there on the back roads.
No problems or anything?
No, the police were in on it. They all worked together. Yeah. I don't have
For people that don't know, there are very tight-knit communities in places like Idaho and Utah and stuff like that where, and not community, but there are communities there that are so tight-knit that they all know each other. They all work together kind of thing. So, the church would know all the law enforcement, and then these people would all, they would find ways to work together because they are a community that knows everybody.
You are correct. I want to tell you a story real quick, gentlemen. Okay. I'll be fast about it.
Take your time.
I was working for this individual that we were smuggling cocaine with. His name was Todd Rasmussen, and he was the branch president out of Fairfield, Idaho. And my uncle wanted me to help him smuggle coke. Well, I also worked for Todd. He was a general contractor. He ran Rasco Construction out of Bellevue, Idaho, which is right there near Ketchum. And so I worked for him. I worked for Todd. And one day I would commute with these two individuals. One of them we called Scandal Randall. He drove this little Jaguar sedan that he'd like to drive really fast. And then there was this other individual. He was a DJ on local radio. I forget his name. But anyways, we were driving down the road, and we were rambunctious young people. And we were smoking a joint, and we were drinking beers as we're going down this flat desert road, going home, south from Ketchum. This is called the Hollywood Highway because you get a lot of rich people, a lot of Hollywood people too, like Bruce Willis, for example, or somebody. They'll fly into Twin Falls, Idaho, and then drive up. So we're flying down this road, smoking a joint, drinking a beer, being dumb kids, and a sheriff comes over the road. Well, Randall was going 90 miles an hour on this little desert highway. He was flying. And the cop, he was instantly on us. And so we threw the joint out the window. We crushed our beer cans, and we're like, crap, we're screwed. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to jail. That is, I can't believe I've been doing this. This is so dumb. I can't believe I'm here with these guys doing this. And we get pulled over. And the cops, there was two of them. One comes up on each side of us, and we roll the windows down, and they knew they had us. They knew they had us. They were like, how are you boys? We were just like, oh man, we are so screwed. And they said, who do you work for? And we said, well, we work for Todd. Everything changed. We went from being arrested to, oh, you work for Todd. Will you boys slow down and you drive more careful? Todd needs you to come to work tomorrow. And we were sent on our way down the highway. Told
Wow.
We were going 90 in a 60 or 65 mile an hour speed limit area. And they just said, just be careful, slow down. Todd needs you to work in the morning. And that was it. And
wow,
so
that's amazing. I want to tell everybody, just for people that might be skeptical, he is actually telling the truth. There's a Rasco Construction. It was Bellevue, Idaho. The owner was Todd Rasmussen. Yeah, at 78 Glendale Road. So just trying to confirm for everybody out there that might be skeptical. I want to make sure that they know that you're telling the truth about these things.
Well, I'm going to say this right now. If I get pulled over, I'm just saying I work for Todd from now on.
It's worth a try, right?
Might work.
I wish you luck, Jay.
Yeah.
Get you in more trouble than you want. So just as an example of the corruption, though, in those kinds of in those areas and those networks, how they work together. They also use local businesses. The CIA will. They get a lot of people in their network. And so I can remember, for example, when I was made to do my CIA Pentagon level black operations testing with Dick Cheney, that happened at a bar in Nampa, Idaho called the Monkey Bar.
You're talking about the former vice president, just so everybody's clear.
Yeah, the former vice president.
But this was before he was vice president or anything.
This was right. Yeah, this was before, and this was right before he went to work for Halliburton. So I was pushed through my Pentagon level black ops testing when I was 17, because Dick Cheney was not going to be doing the testing anymore because he was going to work for Halliburton full time or whatever, and he wasn't going to be able to do it anymore. And they didn't have anybody to do it lined up because it's a very close-knit, tight network and very secretive. I mean, the things they're doing are awful and dirty. And so they didn't have anybody to replace Cheney. So there was several of us that were just pushed through right before he left. And I was one of those people. And so they used a local business called the Monkey Bar, which was an easy place to smuggle somebody into and get rid of bodies and stuff like that. So so they'll use local businesses, and then these things are just happening in people's homes. I mean, I was abused and raised in this environment, right in a normal neighborhood in USA, America, gentlemen, and no one had any idea. They started to figure out. Some folks started to figure it out. I can remember one of my good friends, his father actually started to figure it out, and he was killed fairly quickly after that. My father and another individual who was compromised, who was in the network named Patrick K. Hoon, was him and my dad and his son David and my little brother Tommy. They went and they took care of Daniel Klein because he was talking to the FBI, and so they don't take lightly to that.
No, I would imagine not.
No. So, yeah. What do they use us for? You know, people watching this might be like, my God, this all sounds crazy. Well, it is crazy. I agree with you. It's horrible crazy. But what they're doing is they're making people that they can use in pornography. They're making people that they can use to carry messages as message couriers. They're using people that can even handle people. I would be used even as a handler because I knew how to handle certain individuals, such as Leonardo DiCaprio, Jay. That was an individual that I actually had to work on handling at one point in my life.
You did? When was this?
That was in the year, well, I met Leo twice. And so I saw Leo for the first time. That was in the spring of 1996. And I was down in California. I had escorted, this was right after I'd been cleared to Pentagon level Black Ops through the CIA. And they wanted me to escort my grandmother because my grandmother was also a CIA human bioprogrammer. And they wanted me to escort her down to LA, down to Anaheim, actually. And she was going to be working on programming an individual down there. And so I had to escort my grandma down there. And then after I dropped her off at the hotel, they didn't want me hanging out at the hotel. And so I was taken by my uncle, who also flew down and met us there. And I was taken to a top secret government facility to be involved with the guard detail.
So this is when Leonardo DiCaprio at this time is a celebrity. This is the year before the movie Titanic came out in 1996.
Yeah, he was a celebrity. You know, when we were in a helicopter, well, it's such a long story. We basically went to dinner before I was taken out to the government facility to do guard duty over this huge satanic ritual. It was an absolute nightmare, a horrid satanic ritual. And some very bad things happened. I ended up becoming injured very badly, had my head crushed in. In that incident. And my skull's all crushed in. I can feel right where that individual hit me. They never took me to a doctor. And so that's something someday I need to have looked at. But because it hurts sometimes. It sucks.
I'm sure it does. What goes on at these satanic rituals?
Well, let me cover Leo first. So, yeah, so we had to go to the LA airport after I dropped off my grandma, and we were taking a helicopter, and we landed on a skyscraper. I'm not sure what the restaurant was that we went into. We landed on the roof of this huge building, and then we went inside and we had dinner, me and my uncle, because he was really hungry and he wanted to eat something before we went out to the mountain. Call it the mountain. It's the Trinity Mountain Underground Complex is what it's called. And so we went inside to have dinner, and it was super fancy place. And there was a bar in one area of the restaurant, and we sat down and we ordered our food and all that. But you could hear this crazy laughing going on. And Leo, he has this. I don't want to be hard on him, but he has a really dorky laugh. Like it's really loud and pronounced, and you can tell like, oh, that's Leo over there. And so my uncle, he was like, oh, Leo's over there in the bar getting drunk. And it was a problem for the agency because Leo would go into a bar and get drunk. He just turned 21 some weeks or months before. It hadn't been very long since he turned 21. This was in the spring of 96. And so he was over there in the bar getting drunk and making an ass of himself, essentially. And so after we finished our dinner, my uncle said, I want to go talk to him. I want to go talk to Leo and see what the hell he's doing. And so we went over there and talked to him for a minute. And my uncle knew him. I mean, they just talked, you know, hey, Gail, how you doing? Hey, Leo, what are you doing? You know, you shouldn't be doing this. You know better. Well, Leo doesn't like to be told what to do. And so he wouldn't listen to my uncle. So my uncle, he said he had to go to the bathroom, and he told me to hang out with Leo for a little while and just entertain him. And so I just sat down at the bar with him. And I was 17, but the bartender didn't mind because when I sat down, Leo calmed down and we just talked. And he wasn't making a bunch of noise or making a fuss at all. And so I just sat there with him for maybe 10, 15 minutes. I don't know how long. Smoked a cigarette and we just chatted. And in the end, when my uncle came back, he said, let's go. And I'd been talking to Leo, like, what are you doing drinking? You know, don't you hurt in the morning? Isn't this going to be like, what are you doing? And he would say he was drinking to get drunk. He was going to drink until he passed out. And I was like, well, that seems like a bad idea. Like you're gonna feel like hell in the morning,
Yeah.
and because I was this Mormon kid and I didn't drink very much.
Hmm.
And so I was a little confused. And so we left. And when we were leaving, Leo told the bartender to call for his car. And he was leaving and he was going to go home. And my uncle was blown away. He stopped me in the hall and stairs going up to the helicopter pad.
Hmm.
And he was like, "What did you just say to Leo? How did you, what on earth did you say?" Because these people make a living on manipulating people.
Yeah.
That's what they do for a living. And they could not figure out how to work Leo in that manner to
Hmm.
get him to quit doing that, because it's extremely important in that world, you guys, to keep that image of who Leo is alive in the minds of the people. They
That
can't
makes sense.
let him, yeah, they can't let him make an ass of himself in a
Hmm.
public setting, because it looks bad.
Yeah.
Basically, is the bottom line. And so he was blown away. So I was brought in later again in 20, I want to say it was 2020. I was brought in because Leo was up at the bar in Ketchum, Sun Valley. Yeah, Sun Valley. He was at the Sun Valley Lodge and he was there getting drunk. And I worked in Ketchum, Sun Valley, there in Idaho for a general contractor called Loomis Construction. And that was owned by Mike Chandler. And that was a company that was compromised and the agency had some control of. And so I worked for that company. My uncle got me that job
Hmm.
with that company for a reason. And they were able to use me in that area for various things. And that'll take us back to Boise, Idaho here in a little while.
Yeah.
So you said 2020.
Yeah.
This is after you remember things.
No, I didn't start to remember. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jay. No, 2000.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Yes. No, it was the year 2000. Yep. Because I started to remember things around 2017.
Right.
So, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And so, no, it was 2000. And he was up at the bar and he was getting drunk at the Sun Valley Lodge. And so I got a call at work. Well, my boss actually got the call because it was the year 2000. Thank you, Jay. And my boss had a cell phone. And so he came to the job and he told me my uncle was trying to get a hold of me. And he told me to call him on his own personal cell phone. There weren't a whole lot of cell phones out then. And so I took his cell phone, went outside. It was this huge steel and concrete building. We'd build mansions, huge buildings. This house we were working on at that time was for the CEO of Gap, I want to say. Mickey Drexler was his name.
Hmm.
So a big guy into the Gap company. That was his house we were working on. And so I went out and called my uncle, and he told me I had to come see him. I had to leave work. There was a family emergency. One of my cousins was in trouble. They're always using that term cousin, uncle. It means someone's in the network. It doesn't mean they're necessarily directly related to you. So they would call Leo my cousin. And he said, "Your cousin's in trouble, and you've got to come and help us out with this." And
Hmm.
so I had to go tell Mike, my boss, I got to go. There's a family emergency, And he said, "Just go." And so I went down and I met my uncle. He was at his business partner's house. I believe his name was Kyle. And he went down there or I went down there and met up with them. And they told me I had to go up to the Sun Valley Lodge. And they made me put a suit on and they got me all ready to go up to the Sun Valley Lodge. And when I got to the Sun Valley Lodge, so then I drove up there. It wasn't very far away from outside Haley. And then I drove up there, and at the lodge, the ladies had actually called, the ladies at the front desk, because he was making such a fuss. When I walked in, you could just hear this noise and this ruckus coming from the bar area.
Hmm.
And so I went in, and the ladies at the front desk, they knew I was coming, and they gave me a bar pass. And then they told me to, they didn't really have to point where it was.
Yeah.
Follow the noise, and went to the bar, and I just sat down with Leo for a while. Is all I did. I just went in and had some drinks with him. I think I drank White Russians.
Did he remember you?
No, he didn't remember me. No, actually, when I walked in to the bar, they had sent another team in. Almost everybody in that bar was in on it, if not everyone was in on what was going on, because they were trying to contain the situation. And they had sent in 2 young ladies and a young man to try to coax Leo out of the bar so that he would go make porn with these individuals. He would go have sex with them, and he would quit making an ass of himself in the bar. And it wasn't working. And I'd been told this back at Kyle's house down in outside Haley, that they didn't think it was going to work. And so when I got there, it wasn't working, and Leo wasn't having any of it. And I had been told to take a seat next to Leo at the bar. They wanted me to take that seat, and it was held open for me. And so I went in and I just walked up to the seat and I started to sit down. And I said something to Leo, like about the women, you know, because I love beautiful women. There's parts of me that are a womanizer. And seriously, parts of my personalities are.
Well, who doesn't love beautiful women, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot there. It's pretty complicated, Jack. But I made a comment about the women, and Leo turned around and looked at me, and I'd been warned, if he sees you try to sit next to him, he is going to rip you a new one. And he's going to do everything in his power aside from physically removing you to get rid of you. He's not going to want you there. He doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't want anyone near him that he doesn't trust or doesn't know. And so I went in and I started to sit down, and he started to unload on me. And I just stood my ground because that's what I'd been told to do. I had very strict orders. You hold your ground. You tell them to go to hell. This is your seat. You always sit here. And I was told to tell him that my family owned the bar. He was sitting at the bar that my family owned, and I had every right to be there. And in a way, you know, we were all part of the same familia. We'd refer to the network as the familia. And so, yeah, it's all very convoluted. But so finally he calmed down, and I just sat down and we just talked for a while. It's a pretty boring story, actually. We just sat down and had beers and smoked lots of cigarettes. And finally he decided he was going to leave. But I finally had to say, well, I'm leaving and I got to go because I got to get home. And then it finally got him to where he was moving out, and I was able to get him to go back to his room. And so, but part of that story though, Jay, going back to the police, I was escorted home by the police, by the local sheriff's office, because I lived in Fairfield, Idaho. And so I was escorted from Haley, Idaho, after I drove down to Kyle's house again and met up with my uncle and Kyle, and I gave them back the suit, and they worked on my hypnotism and electrocuted me, hit me with the stun gun, so that they could compartmentalize those memories so I wouldn't remember what I'd been doing. Then I was told the sheriff's office is going to escort you home. And the sheriff's office escorted my drunk self home. They wanted to make sure that I made it home. And so I was escorted home by the sheriff's office. And I can remember that. I remember pulling in and being like, you know, bye. Like,
well, if you have a memory like that about somebody like that, it's obviously going to make news.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that was handling Leo. So they'd use us as a handler too. Sometimes you'd have to handle other people. It just depended on what they needed you for. We'll also be used in things like mass shootings. And so I was supposed to perform a mass shooting in Boise, Idaho, at that failed Boise mission. I was supposed to unload my weapon on an entire crowd coming out of a bar because we were trying to hit one target. See, when I'd gone into that bar, we'll get to that in a minute. That's a kind of a longer story. We're going to run out of time, so I'll move quickly, gentlemen. So they use us for things like that, for mass shootings, for handling each other as message couriers, pornography, basically anything the Satanic Elite or the CIA, they need done that's considered illegal. It's their dirty work, but somebody has to do it. We need somebody who won't remember with personalities programmed to do all these things. And so they're essentially creating sleeper agents. We're called the chosen. I was often referred to as a chosen one. That's a term that they use a lot for us. And I was raised in a generationally ancestral royal satanic family bloodline, and that's what made me so important to them, as well as my family being personally involved as human bioprogrammers. And my grandpa was friends with Bird. Bird was a piece of human garbage, and so was Cheney. But Bird and my grandpa, they were friends, and they worked together in the project. And so it runs in the family, gentlemen. But something I want people to understand. People often are like, well, how could someone do this? Why would you even be involved with this? These satanic families, when you get involved, or any families that get involved with the CIA's trauma-based mind control program, are given protection by the CIA. There are very specific laws. For example, the 1947 National Security Act, the 1949 Central Intelligence Agency Act. Those are two laws that protect my own records from being released by the CIA. I have worked diligently at trying to get my personal records out of the CIA, which they refused to give to me. I've been denied in full. I've been through the entire process, including the appeal process, and I've been denied in full. And so those are two things that are protecting them. So when a satanic family bloodline, like let's just say the Rothschilds, if James Rothschild does something to his kids and it's involved in the project, he is protected. He is protected by those laws from disclosure. If they're involved with murder, drug smuggling, human trafficking, because those are all covered under those laws for national security. So I wanted to make that very clear.
What response do you get? Do you get such much as a form letter? Basically, thank you for contacting us. We'll take it under consideration. I mean, what do they give you back when I think you've contacted the president and you've gotten a response, but a form letter? What about the other agencies? Do you get any response whatsoever, or are you completely ignored?
No, sometimes I'm completely ignored. Like the Intelligence Community Inspector General, when I was trying to contact them, I filled out a whistleblower form. I sent it in. I was calling them, trying to talk to them, and they got to where they actually wouldn't even answer the phone when I would try to call, and I got nothing from them. And then I lost my driver's license all of a sudden. All of a sudden, my driver's license was revoked because of some incident they said happened in a completely different state than the state I was living in. And that was a battle to get my driver's license back and prove I wasn't even in that state. How can you be doing this to me? And so I lost my driver's license from that.
Because you kept on asking them.
Yeah, because I kept pushing them. And then with the CIA, I'm not sure how many letters of correspondence back and forth with the CIA. I have one right here. And this one is my denial of my records on myself from the CIA.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Can you bring it a little closer so we can see can you show the top of the letter?
Yeah, show the letterhead.
Yeah, look at that right there.
Yeah, that's
the Central Intelligence Agency emblem and letterhead.
Yeah, and this one was from John Lilly. Or not John, I apologize. Mark Lilly. I'm used to John, but Mark Lilly. And I worked with Mark on trying to get these things resolved for a while. And then they would change people and you'd be moved to different departments. Yeah, this one is a copy I made. And this is where I was denied in full from the appeal process. So I went through the appeal process trying to get my records out of these people, and I've been completely. And people can find those documents on my website or in my book. I have them available, and people can read them and see what they said for themselves.
Have you given up at this point?
I don't know yet. That's a good question, Jay. I don't ever give up. I just got to figure out how to approach it next, I believe. So.
It's a good way to that's a good way to think, I believe, anyway. Come at it from a different approach. Try different things.
Yeah, so I've got to think about that, and I've been thinking about it. I've just got to figure out how I want to deal with that. So, yeah, so I've been through all that, and it's a hassle, and I've called the FBI. I called the FBI office in my local area, and I tried talking to them, and they finally told me, "You're done talking. You get off the phone." And I was like, "What? Excuse me? You've got
Wow.
to be killing me. I was just describing to you about my grandfather murdering someone, and you're going to tell me that I just need to get off the phone and you're not talking to me?" But I did say, you're hanging up on me. And they said, "Yes, we are. We're hanging up on you."
Are
And
they saying, "Oh, this is just crazy. We don't. It's not credible." What is their reason? Did they give you a reason, or just say, "Stop talking. We don't want to hear anymore"?
no, they didn't give me a reason. No, they just said, "We're done. We're not talking to you anymore." I
And that
also,
was how many phone calls in was that?
that was
One call.
one call. Yeah. One call to the FBI, and no, they didn't want to talk to me. I was blown away. I was so shocked. I was like, "You're kidding me."
I'm not going to ask for the name of anybody you spoke to, but did you get a name of somebody for your own records?
No, unfortunately, I didn't, Jay. That's a really good question, and I've learned a lot through this journey. Things exactly like you just said. Yep.
Oh, listen, I tell, I come from a law enforcement background, just in case you didn't know, JR. And I tell my wife all the time, whenever you talk to anybody, get the name.
Yeah.
Always get the name. It's because it was so many people would tell me, "Oh, I got pulled over by such and such." I said, "Did you get the officer's name?" "No, I didn't." I said, "Always get a name." I said, "No matter what, whoever you speak to, whether it's you're calling to get your cable fixed, get the name of the person you spoke to, so that if they say you didn't, no, I spoke to such and such." So there you go. I always say that. Get a name.
Yeah, no, that's wise. There's wisdom in that, and people should listen to you on that. I agree. I did not get a name. There was also, I called the Utah, what is it, Utah County Sheriff's Office when the
Hmm.
Hamlin case was really hot and they were trying to work on that one.
Hmm.
And I called that sheriff's office and I tried talking to the investigator about it. And I don't remember his name, but I talked to him and he finally said, "What do you want me to do about this?" And I was telling
Wow.
all kinds of horrid things. I was made to kill people. I've been molested. We were made to drink blood, all these awful things. And he says, "Well, what do you want me to do about that?" And I was like, I was blown away. I was like, "What do you mean? What
That's the
can
thing. You have nobody to turn to because nobody's going to do any. I mean, there's not
no.
really. I mean, you have nobody to turn to because if you tell people these things, they're either going to think you're crazy or they're going to say there's nothing we can do about it.
Or they're in on the network and they're
Yeah,
told
that too.
it.
So has
Yeah.
any investigation to any of the things you described to anyone, whether obviously the FBI told you, you're not talking anymore. This one you just said with Utah, same thing that what do you want us to do? But has anyone that you've ever spoken to even attempted to open an investigation or even ask you to come in to speak to them personally?
No, no, never. No, I just get harassed by police. I was harassed in Pennsylvania. I've been harassed in Idaho. I've been harassed in Vermont. I've been harassed. I was escorted out of the state of Utah by the state police.
Wow.
When I went through there, they literally escorted me out of the state.
What happened there? Why did they do that?
Well, because I was driving through, it was a
Mhm.
really hot situation because I was trying to get documentation from a friend of mine in Idaho, an old
Mhm.
high school friend. And I really needed something because I'm trying to build evidence and stuff like that. And so I tried to hook up with them, wasn't able to hook up with them. Well, at a spur of a moment, my wife and I had gone south when we were headed home, and
Mhm.
we went down through Utah. Come here, sweetie. Sorry, my cat came to say hi. We went down through Utah, and we were there for a little while, and we ended up staying longer than I'd like. It was just this one day. And then when we took the road out that leads east out of Utah, right there outside Salt Lake. And then there's this other breakaway freeway that would take you back around to Salt Lake. And then this other freeway takes you out. It's through this canyon. And we were going through there, and I was nervous as all get out going through Utah at all. But I grew up around that area. I grew up in southern Idaho, and I wanted to see Utah because I'd been down there a ton when I was a kid. And my wife,
The Mormon church is heavy in Utah.
very heavy. Yeah, we used to go down there all the time too. And so we were driving out to Utah on this freeway, and it's before you could turn and go back to Salt Lake. And we were before that Y, and I could see in my rearview mirror a police car. It was state police, and they were coming up really fast behind me, but they weren't right behind me. They were passing and weaving through the cars like they were trying to get somewhere. And I was like, oh crap, here they come. And he wove through all the cars. Well, then we hit a construction zone, and it was one lane. And so now he's a couple vehicles behind me, and I'm watching him back there, and I'm like, great. As soon as we get out of this, he's going to be on me. And we get past the construction zone. He comes around and he zips around the cars that were behind me and gets right behind me. And then he's there right behind me. And I was like, oh, crap. You know, you just feel sick. You're like, great.
Yeah.
Then he just stayed right behind me for probably 5-10 miles. I'm not sure how far, until we came to the Y, where you would go back to Salt Lake. And then as soon as we got to the Y and I went straight, he broke off, and then he went back to Salt Lake.
Wow.
And so that was really weird. Another time I was escorted was in Pennsylvania. I was in a little town called Warren, Pennsylvania, and we stayed the night there. And that next morning we got up and we were leaving town with our U-Haul van. And all of a sudden I had several police vehicles around my car, as well as some black SUVs. And they just followed me all the way out to the freeway, got to the freeway, and then the SUVs broke away. And there were, it was police that followed me for a little way on the freeway. And that blew me away. I was like, great. And then in Vermont, I was harassed by the police. Just all kinds of weird stories like that. And in Idaho, the Latah County Sheriff's Office is really corrupt. They were also involved with these kinds of things. I don't know how much they knew, but they were harassing me. They would follow me out on the roads. They'd follow me out on the back roads, and just follow me around. And then I know they were in on it because I was supposed to do work for them, for the Latah County Sheriff's Office, before I woke up and started to remember stuff. And I was supposed to do a remodel for them and put in all this bulletproof glass and redo their front entry, because I was a remodel contractor. I redid buildings, commercial buildings, stuff like that. And they were going to bring me in to do the remodel at the Latah County Sheriff's Office. And I was told I had to meet with the sheriff, and I went in and met with the sheriff, and he, we talked for a little while, and he showed me the project. And then he says, now this was before I was remembering anything. And he says, you need to give us a bid for this project, but I want you to know you're going to win it. It doesn't matter what everyone else's bid in. He said, I just want you to give me a reasonable, honest bid, and you're going to win it. Because we know, he basically said, we know what you've done for our country, and we know who you are, and you're going to be our guy. And I left that meeting just like, what?
Yeah, because you hadn't remembered anything at this point, so it's kind of weird to hear somebody say something like that.
Yeah, they would freak you out with stuff like that, because people would think that you knew and you could remember.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I was like, I actually ended up not contacting them again. I was like, no.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. It really creeped me out. And part of that creeping out was because my subconscious was nagging at me too, because there's part of me that knew, but then there's that part of me that covers it up. And so, yeah.
Now, you tried to report your crimes to, or not your crimes, but any crimes that you witnessed or crimes that happened to you to the FBI, to the president, to U.S. senators, the Utah County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
Inspector General, Attorney General Merrick Garland, the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, CIA Director William Burns, all those people.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I got the only thing I got was letters from the CIA, and then whenever I'd write to those other folks, you'd get helicopter harassments or military aircraft or people on the ground. It got so bad in Idaho, I had to move. My wife and I said, we've got to get out of here because they tried to kill me 4 different times in Idaho. People always love to harass me online and say, oh, why aren't you dead? And I'm like, I should be. Yeah, they have tried to kill me. I can count 4 different times when they have tried to kill me.
Can you talk about that? Like, how did they try to do it?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, there were several different ways. You see, with people like me, we are programmed to die. That's what my suicide programming was at INL, Idaho National Laboratories.
Annika talked about the same thing, the suicide things that are put into your mind. If you're no longer needed on the program, or if you're caught or whatever, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was put through suicide programming, and your heart's supposed to stop. They link your mind and your heart, your body together in a different program. And if you start to remember, or you're going to become compromised, your mind will shut your heart down, and you'll essentially have a heart attack. So spies don't need to carry cyanide pills anymore. They're programmed to kill themselves with their own mind. And so I was programmed to kill myself with my own mind. Well, going back to my brother wanting to come up and see me after he'd never come to visit me. Well, I take that back. You know what, Jay? I think he came to visit once, because he came up to work with me for a little while. But he was not accustomed to coming to visit me. So I apologize for my being incorrect in that. He did come up one time and stayed with me for a little while. But there was another individual who I hadn't seen in years. His name was Chris Cahoon. And Chris is also a CIA-owned trauma-based mind slave. And he was put through programming similar to my own, though we do not have parallel paths in the program. But he was put through the program as well, him and his older brother, David. And he came up to see me after, gosh, I hadn't seen him in probably 15 years or something like that. And then all of a sudden, one day he calls me and he goes, I want to come up and see you. I'm in the area for work and I got to come see you. He was a lawyer for the government. Okay. And all of a sudden he wants to come see me. Yeah. And so at that time I couldn't remember everything. I was just starting to remember stuff. And I said, yeah, come and see me, And so he comes over out to my place and we're sitting outside. I had a fire pit and we're sitting out there talking and we're having a beer. And he said some things that triggered me. He was sent in to trigger me. And then after he hung out for an hour and a half, he left. And I haven't seen him since. And when I had called him back, or I had texted him later about something, and it was about seeing me, and he asked, where do you live again? Like, he couldn't even remember after a short period of time where I even lived. And he had just come to see me. But he had delivered a trigger. And so that next morning after he visited, I woke up and I was very out of my mind. I wanted to get rid of myself. I wanted to commit suicide.
So it was a suicide trigger to trigger your suicide training.
Yes, because I'm not only programmed to stop my own heart, I was programmed to shoot myself. My uncle put me through suicide programming with a Glock 19 after the failed Boise assassination attempt.
What happened there? Are you going to talk about that in a minute?
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
And so he was sent up with that trigger. And the interesting thing is, once I started to remember all this stuff, one of the first things I did was I said to myself, I need a Glock 19. And I went down to the store and I bought a Glock 19. Well, the Glock 19 is what my uncle programmed me to kill myself with, was a G19. And as soon as I remembered that and figured that out, I got rid of my G19 really quick. I'll tell you what.
I was going to ask you, you still have that weapon?
No, I don't. No, I got rid of that.
That's smart.
Yeah, so I don't have that around anymore. So that was one time they tried to get rid of me. Another time they sent couple Mormons in. When I would do kill ops, when I'd be sent in to get rid of people, there were times when we would dress up as Mormons, as missionaries. We would do that, and then we'd go to your door, knock on your door. Well, we weren't there to spread the gospel. We were there to get rid of you. And you know, two missionaries show up at they just let you in. And well, not always. One time a guy punched me right in the face because he recognized me. That's
yeah.
He recognized me and he just said, "You," and he punched me so hard it knocked me out. But so these two missionaries showed up. It was about 8:45 at night, and I'd already gone to bed. And I put a post up on Facebook, and in that post, that was right when I was waking up. And I said, the Mormon Church is involved with the CIA's trauma-based mind control program, basically. And I could look up the exact words for that sometime if anyone needs to know. But within 4 hours, okay, I had someone coming down my road. I had probably a 1/4-mile driveway. I lived out on 11.5 acres at the base of the mountains in Idaho. I built a house out there, and these headlights start coming down the road, our lane. And my wife came and woke me up and said, someone's coming down the lane. And I was like, uh-oh. And so at that time, I did have my Glock, and I went to the door, and I didn't let them in. I opened the door a little, and I had my foot so I could hold the door in case they hit it. And I didn't let them see that I was armed. And I just said, what are you doing here? And they said that I had called and told someone I needed to talk to them, that I needed to talk to someone from the church, and that's why they'd been sent out. And I was like, no, I didn't call anyone. I am not inviting you out here. You need to leave.
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to get them to leave. And then the whole time this guy's talking to me, the other guy behind him, there was two of them. They travel in pairs. And there was the guy talking to me, and then there was the guy behind him. And the guy behind him looked really confused when I said I never called anybody. I never told the church to send anyone out here. He looked shocked, and he was like, what do you mean you didn't? What are we doing here then? He was really confused.
So he wasn't probably in on it, or
he just didn't understand what was going on, because information is so compartmentalized in those kinds of operations. You might not know what's going on.
That's true. You only know your role. That's right.
Yeah, you only know your role. And so, but the other guy who was the lead, he was talking to me, and he said, no, you need to take my card at least. And the whole time he's looking at my neighbor's house, which is off yonder, because I was on 11.5 acres out there. And my other neighbor, he keeps looking at him like he's determining his situation. And then he reaches into his coat to grab what he said was his card. And then he's fighting with something in his coat. And I was like, okay, we're done. I said, you're leaving. And I closed the door, set the deadbolt, and just stepped back. I didn't know what was going to happen.
What did you do?
They stood there for a while at my front door. And I could hear them mumbling stuff outside. And I just stood there, and I was like, okay, what's going to happen next? You know? And I'm watching my back door at the same time, because you never know what's going on. And finally, they went out to their car, and then they sat in their car for a while. And then after they sat in their car for a while in my driveway, they finally left.
Wow.
And so that was an attempt.
Did you notify anybody about that attempt, or?
No. Who are you going to notify?
Yeah.
I'm just asking to say, would you even have bothered to?
No. You're like, how am I going to explain this to anyone?
Yeah, nobody would. Yeah, they wouldn't do anything about something like that.
They wouldn't do anything. And the whole system was so corrupt in Idaho. I don't know who would have even been sent out to my house again, Jay.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, no. And then there was another time they sent in a gunman, and that was in Plummer, Idaho. That day, I texted my parents something that really pissed them off. And then I started getting followed around by vehicles and helicopters that day. Everywhere I went, helicopters followed me around, little black helicopters. And then I had to go pick up my son because he was going to college up in Coeur d'Alene. And so we drove up to Coeur d'Alene. We were followed by helicopters all the way to Coeur d'Alene. And we were like, okay, at one point, we're like, everyone just turn off your phones. Like, we've got to go to dinner and just enjoy ourselves. Because my wife is seeing all this. My kids
Mhm.
are seeing all this.
Mhm.
People want to say I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, talk to my wife. Talk to my kids.
That's true. They're all seeing the same thing.
They're all seeing the same thing. They're all being followed around by helicopters. They're getting weird phone calls. They see people watching us at the end of the property.
Mhm.
I'm not the only one saying this.
So
And
you're no, I'm sorry, JR, but you're here. You're talking about this stuff openly now. Obviously, you've written your books in a second edition now, I believe,
yeah.
and right. So why now? People are going to ask, do you feel safe or safe enough to be able to even come on our program or any other program that you have been on to talk about it? Are you afraid of the security? You have a wife, you have a family. So why now would you feel like, all right, I'm just going for it. I'm going to talk about this. I'm putting it out there when you obviously you said you've been followed, helicopters, people have tried to take you out. Why
Mhm.
now?
The most vulnerable time for you, Jay, is when you first start to remember,
Mhm.
because you don't know who to trust. You don't know who to look to. You don't know what to do. You don't even understand what you're dealing with.
Mhm.
I have been so loud with these people. I have written a book, like you just said. I have put together a website. The first thing I did was put my website together when I had enough information to put that together.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is to keep myself alive and my family, because once you put that information out there, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to send in a gunman, shoot up my house, and kill me and my family.
That's true, actually.
Yeah.
I can see the logic in that because once it's out there, if they do that, then people would be more apt to look in that direction if something like that were to happen to you. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Plus, you've already written to all these other places. If they were going to kill you, they would have killed you when you were writing to all those places, like the Senate committee and all the other places.
Yeah.
Do you have surveillance around your house, JR? Like, is it you have a security system? Are you don't have to answer the question, but Second Amendment rights. What do you do to take extra measures to protect yourself, protect your family?
No, wait, don't answer that. I think they might have paid Jay to be the assassin this time. He's asking
No,
he's
I
asking
don't know.
questions about
I'm
your
just saying,
security
do
system,
you
your
have it?
gun.
You don't have to say what it is, but do you do stuff to protect your stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. If they
I would hope so.
if they want to make a mess, we'll make a mess.
That's
I'll
Say
good.
no
That's good.
more.
Good enough.
Say
I'll
no
just
more.
tell you that. I'll
Okay.
make a mess with them. And so I I don't worry about it a whole lot. I mean, even saying that, there's parts of me that do.
Yeah, of course.
It sucks. It sucks. You go to bed every night going, my God, how has this happened to me? You wake up every morning going, okay, I woke up.
Yeah.
I'm still alive. I mean, think about it. I sleep with a handgun under my pillow. Like, I'm not going to tell you much more than that, but
I got you.
there's not a moment in my life where you see me where there is not a handgun or a weapon on me or within close proximity.
Yeah. You
And
always have to have your guard up. Yeah.
you always have to. And things like camera systems and stuff, that's a completely different discussion. Let me just say I work very diligently at taking care of myself and my family.
Okay.
Good. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
And I'm well aware of my situation. And you never feel safe.
No, you
Ever.
don't. You
And
can't.
so, no, even though I'm trying to blow the lid off of this, and I have been trying so diligently to blow the whistle,
Mm-hmm.
seriously, when I wake up, I'm like, okay, I'm still alive. I'm still going. I'm still here.
That's
But
great.
part of my strength, Jay, is that when I was put through suicide programming, they actually stopped my heart.
Mm-hmm.
They had to stop my heart in order to set that program in my body and in my mind. They had to do it. And so I have been dead, and I have been through the tunnel of light, and I have been in the meadow of light. There was this beautiful meadow I was taken to, just incredible. It would take me a long time to describe that event to you guys. People can read about it in my journaled memories. It's called The Other Side,
Mhm.
and that's where I died.
How long were you dead for?
I
Do
don't
you
know
know?
that. No, I just remember being taken away in the tunnel. I was all of a sudden in this beautiful, beautiful meadow of just beautiful. It was made up of energy and light. Everything was energy and light.
Interesting.
And yeah, and from there, my uncle, who had passed away a short time before, he was my guardian angel. And I've seen,
Is this the same one that was your handler?
No,
no,
he's still alive.
he's still alive.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, no, this is another uncle who died of cancer. And he came and met me there in the meadow and he said, "What are you doing here?" And he was really worried I'd killed myself because it wasn't my time to be dead. I guess there's
Mhm.
a time for you to be dead. And so, with that said, I know that there's a time I'm supposed to die. And
Mhm.
they can't kill me until that time comes. And when that time comes, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I'm ready at any time because that place I went to was beyond description. It was home.
But
We
how
go
can you know if they're when they're trying to kill you if it's your time?
That's not for me to decide.
I know it's difficult. It's hard to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not for me to decide. So I know where I'm going when I die. I know who I have to answer to. When I was there, I was taken to this, I would call it a city, and it was down in this big valley of light.
Mhm.
And I was taken down into this beautiful city by my uncle. And all the buildings were made of this translucent material. I mean, there were buildings there, and it was all very Greek style, Roman style architecture, and everything was made out of translucent material. And all the light from that place came from all of the spirits there. They all emanated a light, and everyone had their own level of light that they emanate.
That's interesting. This is the
Yeah,
first time. I mean, I've heard, um, uh, death experiences categorized in this way, where it is the light and the energy. This stuff's everything's made out of energy because that's what everything is made from energy. Actually, every single thing that you see, feel, touch, and hear, it's all made from energy. So, it's very possible. This is the first time I've heard it described like this, which is very interesting. How each one, had their own light, their own energy that they were putting off, which made the whole thing, kind of glow. It's very interesting stuff.
yeah, yeah. So it was a beautiful place. And then I was taken to this building and I had to wait outside. It was some kind of government administrative building there in what we would call heaven, I suppose.
Oh
Mhm.
no, please don't tell me we still can't get away from it even in heaven from the government.
You got
Well,
bureaucracies in heaven.
Oh,
I
come
don't
on.
know what they're doing. I mean, I was
Don't
just
tell me
taking,
heaven's got the DMV. We can't handle that. We can't handle that.
no, they were very nice. They were very nice. When I got there, though, a lot of people will come and see you.
Hmm.
They'll hear that you're there. And so a lot of people came to see me. There were a lot of people that I'd been made to kill that came to see me. A lot of people who had passed away before. And that's a really long story. In the end, I had to come back. And so I was sent back. It wasn't my time. But
So
so
let me ask you then. We've got about 17 minutes left. I wanted to ask you about the. Did you talk about the Boise attempt and what happened there?
no, thank you. We will get into that right now.
Okay.
I put these outlines together and it just all takes so long.
No, it's no problem.
So I was used in Japan. We talked about that a little bit.
Hmm.
And I was made to get rid of somebody over there. And I was used again in Boise, Idaho. Well, after I got back from Japan, there was this guy who he had burned me and tortured me with a cigarette
Hmm.
cherry. And I have a scar on my chest right here where he burned me really bad with that.
Wow.
And you don't do that to a chosen one. This was an individual who was in the network. That's a really long story, but we ended up getting rid of him because he knew too much and he wasn't behaving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was made to be involved in an assassination in Boise. And there was a target. I'm not sure who he was. I couldn't tell you. He was a man of color, a colored man.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't from America. He was from another country. And he'd done something. He was involved in politics and the corporate world in his country. And he'd done something to really piss off the network.
Mm-hmm.
And he betrayed his country. He basically betrayed his country and betrayed the CIA and the corporate world and the satanic network. And they wanted to get rid of him. He came to Idaho. He killed his first wife. He murdered his first wife, and he had kids with her, but he murdered her. And the CIA helped him cover that up. And the CIA even gave him another wife from Idaho, this gal who grew up in the area I grew up in. And I believe I know who she was even. And they basically gave him her, and she was raised in a very abusive satanic family. And so they do that kind of stuff. And he moved to Idaho. He was abandoning the country he came from, stole a bunch of money, and he was coming to Idaho. And so we caught up with him in Boise, and I was supposed to shoot him. We had a shoot nest site that we had up on top of a building in downtown Boise there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to shoot this guy. He was in the Neurolux bar. People can look this stuff up. It's easy. I mean, he was just in the Neurolux.
Mm-hmm.
He loved the Neurolux, and I was sent into the Neurolux before the operation. So back to training a little bit. We did do training on this operation. We sighted in our rifle and worked on my marksmanship outside of Boise. There was a shooting area outside Boise to the north of town. And we went out and did some shooting and sighted in our weapon that we were going to use for this operation. We would store a lot of our CIA gear at the Boise airport. And because there was a facility there where we could hide it in the luggage handling department. And basically the mission failed because I'd gone into the bar to lay eyes on the target. My uncle wanted me to see the target and lay eyes on the target, verify he was in the Neurolux.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And when I was leaving, I ran into one of my best friend's sisters. I ran into Greta. I won't tell you her last name, but I ran into Greta. And she was drunk, and she looked at me, and she just blurted out my name. What are you doing in here? And I was operating under an alias.
Mm-hmm.
I had my military ID card that we'd made with Bird one year. That was back in '93 when we made these ID cards. And I just had my military ID card. And I don't know if it was the same one as we made with Bird, though. But I had this fake ID, and I was operating under an alias. And I was like, you're going to blow my cover. And I had this earpiece in because my uncle was in contact with me the whole time. He was out in the van.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all this equipment set up in the van. And essentially the operation failed because my uncle, when I got back out to the van, he said, what the hell happened in there? And I said, I ran into Greta. And she was almost going to blow my cover because she was yelling my name. And she was like, what do you have in your ear? And she was reaching up to grab it. She was so drunk. And she was like, what are you, a secret agent or something? I mean, she was right, is the thing. Like, yeah, I was at that time. And so she almost blew our cover. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I got back in the van and we went over to where we had our shoot nest site set up, and I was sent up on the roof. I had to go up the outside of the building with some Jumars. They're called Jumars, and you're able to go up a rope with them,
Mm-hmm.
ascend a rope. And I got up to the roof and got all set up. This time I did have to set up my own rifle. We didn't have as much of a team on this one, and I was older, and so I got set up there, and it was cold. It was windy. Something I'd like to add is that I had smoked marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Marijuana is something they don't want trauma-based mind slaves having, because that is the one drug that will inhibit trauma-based mind control programming.
Mm-hmm.
It'll cause your brain to use logic. And I hadn't smoked it in a while. I think it had been a couple days since I'd had some with some friends of mine. They'd come over and we'd sat out on my back porch and we had a little bit. Um, and I think that's what blew the op, because I was up there on the rooftop and I'd been told, and then my uncle came over the comms and he said, "You're going to kill the target, and then you're going to kill Greta, and then you're going to unload your weapon on everyone coming out of the bar. I want
Oh,
you."
that's when you're supposed to do the mass shooting too.
Yeah. And so that was going to cover up the assassination. That was going to
Okay.
cover up Greta
Hmm.
getting shot as well. That was going to act as a cover for that operation.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense.
I was up there and I was just freezing my butt off, and I just started to think, and I was like, this sucks. It's really cold. And then little parts of my mind would nag at me, you can't kill Greta. Like, this is wrong, you know? And after a while, I just broke. I just broke down. And my
Yeah,
uncle was,
because when you smoke it, it makes you think a lot more. You know, you get a lot more in the paranoid, but you think a lot more.
yeah, and this was even a day or two later or however long. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it was enough to break that programming. And my uncle got on the comms and I told him I'm freezing my, well, we didn't talk very kindly. When you're dealing with these operations, there's a ton of swearing. They're very mean. You're very mean to each other. Military people can be like that. But anyways, I finally just said, screw you. You can go to hell. Why don't you get up here? But in not so nice words. Like
Hmm.
I was really mad. You get up here if you want to do this. You didn't give me the proper gear. You didn't give me the proper clothes even. I was going through in my mind, how can I get out of this? How can I get out of this? And then he just said, you get down here. You get down here right now. And I can remember packing up and going down the ropes. And I don't remember what happened when I went in the van. Something really bad happened in there. He was
Can I,
really bad.
we only have a few minutes left. I want to ask you, can you tell me, can we go back to, can you tell me what happens? Like, can you give me like an example, maybe a story of what happens during these satanic rituals? Because there's a lot of people out there that believe that the elites, you know, a lot of them are into, you know, Luciferian, you know, satanic, the whole ball thing. And, you know, and a lot of them are, you know, satanic pedophiles. A lot of people think that a lot of the satanic pedophiles are what run a lot of the operations, you know, in the world. So can you tell us what goes on at these kind of rituals?
That's a really good question, Jack. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
The I was involved with satanic rituals, but the thing that I remember most that involved the elite, as we would describe them, the satanic elite,
Mhm.
was being made to play the most dangerous game, and that's a human hunting game.
Mhm.
And I was hunted as a child, and my cousin was. We were made to strip naked and run, and they chased us with dogs, guns, and helicopters. And the Hiltons were there. Nikki and Paris were there. That was the first time I met Nikki and Paris. And then I would later become engaged to Nikki, because her mom was really impressed with things that happened in the game because I tried to help the girls at one point, and then
Engaged
engaged
to be married.
to be married. Yes, back in 1998, I learned that I was engaged to Nikki.
So
And
you didn't know at this time? Yeah, no, you had no memories at this time.
no, and so yeah, in 1998, I was engaged to Nikki, but the first time I met her in Paris, her sister, was in Oklahoma back in 93 when we were made to play the most dangerous game together,
Mhm.
or at the same time, I should say. And that was a bad deal. I mean, they hunted us and then they raped us and they killed people in that event right in front of you. And that was a horrid, horrid thing. I can remember being involved in satanic rituals where we would be made to kill people, slit their throats out. That was a big thing in the Mormon church. Is
Yeah,
if you,
that draws the most blood, yeah.
yeah, and so you'd have a whole family. You'd line up on plastic, and you'd go through, and they'd always start with the oldest, and then you'd go through. So that guy in Boise, he didn't get away. Okay, that was a failed op in Boise, but we caught up to him again in Haley, and we killed him in a whole different manner. We killed him in the Mormon manner, where him and his whole family were made to get on plastic in his kitchen, and we went through and slit out all their throats, and we drained all their blood into. It's a bad deal, gentlemen.
Yeah, it sounds really rough, man. Sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, but that's what they do. And you're right. The elite are into that kind of stuff. And that's why I'm getting married off to Nikki, because I come from a royal satanic family bloodline, and so does she. And now she's married to James. I believe he's Rothschild.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. What's interesting is look at James. Pull him up and look at him. Who does he look like to you?
What's his name? James what?
Rothschild.
Oh, Rothschild. That's right. It's amazing how she just happened to marry a Rothschild, right? Isn't that interesting? The elite of the elites, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so,
holy crap, he looks just like you. That young picture that you showed me.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and she didn't get married for years. You know, I was supposed to marry her, and then I ended up getting married to my wife. Now God put my wife Kate in the way, and we ended up getting married. And my family tried to break up our marriage several times, and that didn't work out. So I'm glad it didn't.
So, how old was Nikki in 1998?
I don't know. She must have been like 15 or something, you guys. She was young. We were made to make a porn video together in this hotel that I was staying in. I was taken from my room, and they came to our room, and one of the individuals I grew up with in the Nampa area was with them, and they said they had to go do church work, and I didn't recognize Nikki. I mean, I hadn't seen her since The Most Dangerous Game, and I'd only seen her once, and so I didn't recognize her. But that's when I learned we were engaged, and we went up to the top floor of the hotel and were made to make a porn video up there, and that's when we both learned that we were engaged to each other. So
wow.
Was she somebody was told she was 14?
She was 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah.
These people have no morals, no moral compass. This is
Oh, sorry, JR. Are there any photos that of you and her together anywhere? Or go ahead.
No, this was a secret engagement. If you can find that horrid video we were made together, we were made to make together. That I don't want to see it, but I'd like somebody to understand that.
Well, take a look. And yeah, Jay, take a look at those photos I just sent you. That is the Rothschild that ended up with Nikki, and look at him when he was younger.
Yeah, there's a resemblance there.
Is that not incredible? They look very similar.
Yeah.
So that was Nikki. But yeah, they kill people in all kinds of horrible ways, gentlemen. And to recap, we're running out of time. I'm not here just to talk to you guys. I like you guys, and you've been fun to talk to, but I'm here to blow the whistle on this stuff. People need to learn about it. They need to know about it. This stuff's going on.
Very important.
It's so important. And if they can learn to understand it, they can learn what's going on in their world. Things like the assassination of Charlie Kirk will make a lot more sense to them. Things like the Epstein files will make a lot more sense to them if they can learn about these things.
The problem is, though, people think that this stuff is so outrageous that it couldn't possibly happen. But these kind of things do happen all the time. I mean, people don't realize that, these are not just, shit that you pull out of thin air. These things happen to people.
No, they're horrid. In a way, it's good that people can't imagine, because they probably have a good, healthy mind. But there's a lot of people that are evil. I mean, look at history. History is full of evil people. Just plumb full of them. Yeah. Do your research. The world's full of evil people. These things are still going on. The CIA didn't end their project. Yes, the satanic elite are into killing. They're into drug smuggling. They're into raping their own kids and putting them through the Monarch Project.
That's real quick. Tell people, we're running out of time. So tell people where they can find you, where they can find your book.
They can find me at mormonmonarch.com. That's my website. And you can find all my journal memories for free on my website. They're free to you. If you read those, you will understand your world better. You can also buy my book through my website. It's at lulu.com. And you can buy it if you want a book form, or you can just read it online for free. It's up to you. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. But that's the only platform I'm on. I'm not on Facebook anymore.
So you're on
Well,
X.
JR, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been it's been really enlightening and very interesting, and it was nice to meet you, nice to have you on the show, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good to be here. Thank you, gentlemen. I hope that it all recorded okay and the live thing went okay and everything I said makes sense. These things are really hard to talk about. So
Well,
I do want to say real quick that throughout his story, I was trying to verify as much as I could, and I did not find any inconsistencies in his story. I will say though, with the stuff like Nicky Hilton and Leonardo DiCaprio, this is not something that we have verified independently. This is his story. This is what he this is his story. It's not what we know independently. But I will say the other things that you told us, about, just different individual things I was able to verify, like about this company or where this was or what year this happened. All those things were true in terms of that kind of thing.
yeah, the truth.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that. Because we got to go. But JR, really, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And we hope that everybody learns something here, because there's a lot of horrible things going on out in this world. Jay, do you got anything else to say real quick?
I just want to mention, JR, go Yankees. I like your hat. That's it.
That represents ending slavery. The Yankees fought slavery.
All right, we got to go because we're running out of time. All right, you guys, thank you so much. For Jay Gatling, I am Jack Danger. Thank you for watching Secret America.
You've been listening to Secret America.